We talked about this gunman, police saying that there was no apparent criminal history leading in. We know that moving forward, the questions will now become if could this have been prevented, and what can be done so that it doesn't happen again. And one of the ways when we've seen these situations play out in the past, in which lawmakers have really pushed for, is something we call red flag laws. That is a ability of law enforcement to be able to basically press pause on someone's access to having weapons and firearms. Our Alex Littlehales here in 13 News Now did a special report. He's in the room right now. Alex, this just went out yesterday, this report. The timing of it, even in of itself.
It's really unfortunate.
Right?
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about flag laws, the intention behind them? And I know we'll get more into your actual report.
So this was this topic in general has been becoming a lot more of a headline in recent years specifically, because a lot more states are beginning to look into these kinds of laws. So I think the current count is that there are 21 states plus D.C. that now have red flags in effect, including Virginia, which is why I did a story basically looking at red flag utilization here in Hampton Roads specifically. But this has really become a topic of conversation over the last 5-10 years as more and more states their state legislatures are looking into this. Because, as you mentioned, what it essentially is a red flag law is basically an order that law enforcement gives to a person if they conduct an investigation and they believe that a person is a risk to themselves or others. And so the reason I did this story is because Virginia passed red flag legislation in 2020. So we have a pretty good chunk of time. We have 5 years to look at because it's 2025. So I looked at this and I said, hey, we have now 5 years worth of data to look at when legislators and lawmakers passed red flag legislation, specifically in Virginia. How often is it actually being utilized? And we can maybe toss to the report that I did yesterday. That is obviously a sort of tip of the iceberg to the situation.
An analysis of crime data across Hampton Roads shows just how often law enforcement agencies across the 7 cities and surrounding counties have confiscated weapons under Virginia's red flag law. In 2020, state lawmakers passed red flag legislation, and with it, the creation of emergency substantial risk orders. It allows law enforcement to stop someone from having, buying, or even transporting guns if they believe someone is at risk to themselves or others. In many cases, beginning as a mental health crisis.
I think if we're going to talk about public safety, these types of ordinances or laws allow us to err on the side of caution.
Through a public records request, 13 News Now obtained the number of red flag orders across Hampton Roads since the law took effect 5 years ago. Here's what we found. Hampton has overwhelmingly issued the highest number of red flag orders at 169 cases. It makes up almost half of all the red flag orders in the region since the law took effect. In York County, deputies have issued 25 red flag orders since 2020. Although a staunch defender of the Second Amendment, Sheriff Ron Montgomery called it an invaluable, proactive tool to preventing greater tragedy.
I think sometimes the difficulty is resolving the issue between public safety and the public's right under the Constitution as well. And it can tend to clash, and it brings out a lot of emotion in people.
In Virginia Beach, the region's largest city, it holds the second highest number of red flag orders at 58. The cities of Newport News, Chesapeake, and Norfolk all have over 30 registered risk orders.
It's not the government coming in just saying we want to take anyone's firearms from them. In fact, most law enforcement, if you know them, very pro Second Amendment.
Detective Gino Jackson worked on a case in 2022 where a red flag order was obtained, saying it helped prevent a potential tragedy at a Portsmouth Walmart.
What's really interesting about that particular case was that it was a very short amount of time after the unfortunate incident that happened at the Chesapeake Walmart.
It remains the city's only use of a red flag law in 5 years.
That person made those threats against the Portsmouth Walmart, and that's what caused us to get the substantial risk order. Make sure that that person did not have access to those firearms.
Still, red flag orders may not guarantee a peaceful resolution in the end, such as the case of Dana Plummer, who in 2024 kidnapped his 3 children after stabbing their mother before leading police on a statewide chase. Court records obtained by 13 News Now reveal 5 months prior he surrendered several weapons to Virginia Beach police, including a hidden shotgun. Officers assessed that Plummer, quote, seemed to be going through a crisis, and although his weapons were removed that March, the abduction 5 months later ended in a crash with his 16-month-old daughter killed in the wreckage. Moving forward, Jackson hopes red flag orders become a more regular and frequently used tool for law enforcement.
I think that law enforcement can absolutely use it in a more proactive approach.
Reporting, Alex Littlehales for 13 News Now.
So Eugene, Sarah, there's 2 pieces of information in there that I thought was noteworthy just watching it again, even though I put the story together. One you'll notice is the wide range of use, right? So you have a city like Hampton seemingly very proactive in using this tool. I mean, they per capita were way higher in their usage of this than any other locality, and they are by no means the largest city in Hampton Roads. So the number was 169 uses in 5 years. Then you have Portsmouth, one, right? So that speaks to what the Portsmouth detective was talking about a little bit when we had chatted, is that there is at the moment not a, I believe that not a lot of law enforcement officers are fully aware that this tool is in their back pocket. He mentioned it himself. He says, I used it in one instance, and it was a little bit of a gotcha question for him, but he did not know that it was the only use of a red flag order in his own jurisdiction, and that is not necessarily knocking anyone. It just speaks to whether law enforcement agencies, how often they're utilizing this as a part of their toolkit, right? So that's one, just the wide range of use. And 2, he also specifically talked about how in that one use, it was because it was a short time after the Chesapeake Walmart mass shooting. And in that case, there was a person that they saw making threats against a Walmart, posting weapons on their social media. That is the genesis of why he sought that risk order, is because it happened several weeks after the Walmart mass shooting. You have someone else making allegedly a similar kind of threat, posting things on social media. Some of those posts include weapons. In fact, he actually mentioned that part of those, when they actually investigated this, when they went to the home, they found the background of this home matched the background of the social post. So those are the 2 things that I thought were noteworthy, is just how wide the variety is in terms of its use, but also it is used in situations in relation in tandem to mass shootings.
I will say this, though, Alex. I mean, I hear what you're saying about Portsmouth, and I know that there's been a lot of conversation and talk from community to police about making sure that the community is safe. I know in Portsmouth they put in a lot of things to try to reduce violent crime in the city over the last few years. I can't help but think that if one city like Hampton has used it 169 times and another city like Portsmouth is only using once, that's a difference of not just people. That's a strategy thing. I have to think, right?
I mean, we talk about
that's a strategy thing.
Proactive policing is a term that's brought up a lot by different chiefs. How do we be proactive instead of reactive, right? So it appears in Hampton that this is one of their strategies, right? We want to get ahead of this before before this becomes a situation where we're reacting to something, right? Both cities still deal with their levels of crime, so this isn't to say that one works better than the other, but it does, I think, illuminate the fact that 5 years of data, Hampton and Portsmouth, similar population sizes, and you have such a stark difference. And then you also, you see the sheriff in York County. Mm-hmm. York County is not a large by populous area. It is also a very conservative area. Mm-hmm. But there you have the sheriff there admitting he's very pro Second Amendment, but even to him, this is a tool that is extremely necessary and one that he really supports, despite the pushback that could, the conversation is, well, this is someone illegally and temporarily removing my weapons. Is that a constitutional violation? Someone who is a staunch defender of the Second Amendment is advocating for it in his locality. So I think that speaks to, at least from a law enforcement standpoint, how widely admired, at least, the existence of this tool is.
I can't help but think, again, in context of what's going on in Minneapolis and what we will eventually learn about the background of the gunman in this case. But were there any conversations in your reporting, Alex, where maybe some said that we need to take it any steps further, or there needs to be additional things that we could do when it comes to possibly flagging anyone who could potentially cause some kind of harm with the use of weapons? Was there anything that anyone suggested that caught your attention?
It's tough.
That they're pushing for?
It's tough just because there needs to be, this is a civil violation, but there still needs to be elements of a criminal investigation in it. They need to have evidence. This is not a type of thing that, your neighbor can say, I'm worried about this person, and then they automatically remove the guns from the situation, right? If they do that, then there has to be a criminal there's an investigation into whether there is enough of a threat to actually go to the court and say, we need to remove this person's guns. So if we tie it all back to the unfortunate situation in Minneapolis, okay, maybe there were some signs beforehand, but was there actually enough to warrant action from law enforcement?
Okay. Well, excellent report there, Alex. And as always, if you go to our website, 13newsnow.com, you can read more that may not be in the actual visual portion as well. But Alex, always great work. This is certainly going to be a topic of conversation as we look forward to what's happening in Minnesota and elsewhere across the country.